Welcome to the Church Safety and Security broadcast with the Church Safety Guys, sponsored by Checker, background screens for your faith or volunteer organization. The Church Safety Guys is a nonprofit organization. Our mission is to inspire, influence, and impact church safety and security teams. We are protectors, guardians, ambassadors, and shepherds. We are about all things church safety and security, which starts with a ministry mindset and a servant's heart. Join us for the next hour as the Church Safety Guys unpack safety, security, leadership, and ministry operations with your hosts, James McGarvey, Paul Buckner, and Mike Scully. This broadcast is also available on social media, YouTube, your favorite podcast platforms, and on the all-new Church Security app.
Well, hello and welcome to the Church Safety and Security broadcast with the Church Safety Guys. I am your host this evening, James, and I'm joined by Paul and Mike this evening. How are you guys doing?
Not too shabby.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year once again.
Yeah. Yes, since I missed the last episode.
Once again. So we're gonna cover the topic tonight, starting your year well, and we're about a week behind on that topic, but better late than never, right? Just like my resolutions to hit the gym. Oh my goodness. So anyhow, welcome. Thanks for joining us. And if you are in need of church safety and security resources, feel free to reach out. Our website is churchsafetyguys.com. And then we also have our church security app, which has a great ton of free content. You can watch past episodes on our YouTube channel and catch up. And you can also hear past episodes this season on the app. So if you need anything, again, regarding church safety and security, please reach out to us, and we'd love to do the best we can to help you and help you navigate what you're navigating. And sometimes it's just I joke around about this, but I see this more and more. Sometimes it's just a listening ear, right? Or typing a message. We get that a lot, where somebody will message us on Facebook or email and just say, my church is horrible. How can I handle? Can you help me? People sending up smoke signals.
Every week. It's like whether we're getting messages directly or it comes in through the page or things like that, it's ever increasing. It's like at some point we're going to need an operator just to handle some of the messages coming through, because we're getting a lot of folks that are asking questions, that are just wanting to chat. And to your point, James, they just want a listening ear to kind of say, hey, we understand that you guys are doing this. You're in the trenches. We're virtually in this together, shoulder to shoulder. And at the end of the day, sometimes it's just about commiserating, and not everything has an answer. And sometimes that answer can only be found within your given church. We can coach and we can share expertise and we can share what we've stumbled through at times and what we've learned from what we've done wrong. And hopefully that's helpful at times. But it's amazing the volume of people that are reaching out.
Absolutely. And honestly, that kind of goes into last week, we talked a little bit about how much we've grown, how much God has blessed, and how much Church Safety Guys as a ministry has grown in the last year. And, tonight we want to talk about moving forward, right? Starting your year off well, some of the things, and just throw out some best practices and that sort of thing. But to your point, Mike, tonight, we wanted to bring up what we're doing because of that growth, and because the three of us don't know everything. Right? What?
Have we ever said that we did?
No,
I don't think so.
No, we didn't.
Maybe not. I don't know. Anyhow, moving on. I plead the fifth on that one. One of the things that we wanted to introduce and kind of mention to you folks is that as we start branching out, this year we're going to more conferences. We're trying to have an impact. We're we're responding to more, like we have an increase of churches reaching out to us. We've actually kind of added a few partners to our ministry, and what we do is we actually call that an advisory committee, but we've actually named it CSG ISIA, and a lot of times we abbreviate, church safety guys for CSG. That's just kind of our acronym for it. But ISA is actually iron sharpens iron, and so this is based on the passage in Proverbs, and this advisory group isn't a board per se. It's not designed to be like a nonprofit board or anything like that. This is a group of guys and gal that can just look at our ministry and help. And they've been extremely passionate about praying for us, keeping us in their prayers, coaching us, holding us accountable, and then also, just being there. Sometimes it's always nice for us too, like when we're trying to talk through something, maybe you, one of the listeners, reached out to us. A lot of times, if you have a unique situation that maybe we've never talked about before or experienced, that gives us an opportunity to reach out to them and say, hey, I've got a church that's going through this. Can you, help us out? And so there's more information on those folks on the website, but part of the areas that we've, as we've grown, we've added those folks. Jason and Heather White, they've been guests on the broadcast before. They are both involved in a church ministry down in Florida. Jason is actually a former U.S. Marshal, and he's a church planter, and he's doing a lot of stuff down there. But he actually is. He and his wife have a ministry in Florida for missions. And so, again, that's kind of an area outside the country. He trains missionaries all the time, many times a year, on awareness and handling safety and that sort of thing. And so that's another area that we've been able with him. We're happy and excited that he's joined. One of the other individuals that you've seen on the broadcast, Jared Teslov. Jared is a great guy, Rock Point Church, Mesa, Arizona, former law officer and now pastor. He is a full-time church safety director of a church, multi-campus church out in Arizona. And Jared's a great guy. He's got a lot of experience with nonprofits, and has just been an amazing help to me with the broadcast, with scheduling, has jumped right in and helped us kind of navigate some of that and do a higher volume. But it's nice for us. It's nice because, we're all from really smaller churches. I mean, if you think about it, but his church has grown, and he started off small, and now his churches have several campuses. So that's really cool. And then finally, Ron Aguiar is with Oasis Safety. He's joined our folks. And Ron is in Florida, but for years, he has a background in law enforcement in Hawaii and Massachusetts, and corporate security. And Ron has a true heart for the ministry. He's written some great books to help folks. And he and his family go around teaching churches and training churches on safety and whatnot. So for us moving forward, one of the reasons, and I'll throw it over to Paul because I know you wanted to say something, but one of the reasons that we kind of picked those folks is to also be able to have rotational speakers, and we might get to that at some point in this year. I'm not sure what the timeline is for that, but just in case you happen to see a different face on, and you're like, who in the world is that person? I just tuned in to hear Paul's punny comments. That's what's going on. So we haven't left, we haven't gone anywhere, but we've tried to break up a little bit, starting the new year with, hey, how can the three of us maybe spend a little bit more time, get as much done, but spend more time with our families and not sacrifice that. And as much as we all love jumping in and helping churches and others, and this has grown amazingly, this ministry, there are times when we all need to kind of take that example of Christ and step back and take a break from ministry to recharge. So those guys are guys and gal are awesome. And I look forward to having them more involved with the broadcast and ministry in the next year. So Paul, I'll throw it over to you. Sorry, that was a long.
You're good. You're good. Well, and you said most of where I was going. So bringing people together with different backgrounds that they share common ground with us, and then they have experiences we don't have. That's huge. That's awesome. And being able to bring in a guest speaker, we've all had our church throw us a curveball like, oh, hey, by the way, we've got this event off campus for 200 people and it starts in 4 hours. And we're going to need security for it. I mean, that just happens. That's the way the sheepdog life is for the security team.
Right.
So we've all had that curveball thrown at us like, oh, that's right. We need security presence. I had that happen today for tomorrow night. And so by being able to do something like that, we can ring each other up and I can go, James, I've got a problem. James can do it. Mike can do it. And then we all have family life and obligations. So it's nice to be able to take that step back and bring in another fresh voice, because back to what you said in the beginning of this, James, we've never claimed to know it all. And if it was not for folks in the insurance world and in the law enforcement world with military backgrounds, with de-escalation skills, lawyers, if it was not for all of these folks that we've had these amazing conversations with, we wouldn't be where we are today. So it really is an iron sharpens iron. I hadn't heard it broken down into the shorter acronym yet. So I was like mentally going through what that meant. And I was like, oh, hey, that's cool. But I love that because what is it in Proverbs? With many advisors, victory is sure, a paraphrase of Proverbs. And we need all of that. And it brings in some fresh voices. So when you do get tired of my puns, there's a fresh face to break it up. Yes, exactly.
Well, I want to hit on that advisory part really well. Is we kind of talked about iron sharpens iron, and we certainly get the reference. I think that advisory piece is that, and James covered some of it, but they're there to challenge us as much so that we can continue to be stretched and we can continue to cast additional vision like we encourage you to do for your teams. So we want to make sure that we're continually focusing on growing and stretching and what we can do on a continual basis. And we talked at the beginning about listening. Sometimes those folks just want to listen, have somebody listen to them. Well, now we have a team of people who are willing to listen to us specifically about kind of the sausage making, if you will, the behind the scenes, the planning and the details of where do we go next, and make sure that, when we're discerning and praying about something in a direction of where we go with CSG, we have another set of people that we can vet that through so that we can look beyond our own biases, our own proclivity, I guess, to follow a certain pattern because we've been doing this for X number of years. In fact, I'm hitting my 2 years coming up later this month. So I think it's, which blows my mind, but I think it's that challenge, that advisory that's going to be tremendously valuable.
Oh, I absolutely agree. And sometimes it's nice too. And this is one of the things that, that I've already done is, I had a church reach out and connect with me and say, hey, we're going through this, this sort of thing. But it gave me the opportunity to literally pick up the phone and not bug you guys about something. Right. So I can bug somebody else. So I've like called Jared or Jason or Ron and just said, hey, you know what, this church is dealing with this. Like, how would you handle this? And so that in a lot of ways solidifies our coaching and our abilities, because, we're doing the best we can to try and help and continue to help folks, but we want to make sure that we are looking at stuff the correct way ourselves. So sometimes having a friend and, being able to reach out and call is half the battle. So
those peers, you're constantly reaching out to kind of say, you know what, I mentioned stretching, and there's a ceiling and we want to keep always growing. And in other words, we never want to become stagnant. We never want to get to a point where we feel like we've arrived, because we haven't.
Semper Disciplina.
Exactly. Always training. You beat me to it, but I think always training is beyond just training at the range or training specific procedure. It's always about investing in ourselves. It's stretching ourselves to always think beyond where we've thought before. In other words, you got to keep pushing for further and keep trying to inject yourself with additional information, if you will, so that you can think differently than you previously might have.
For sure. So let's jump into it. Let's talk about a few things starting your year well. We've kind of talked a little bit about the church safety guys in our ministry and what we're looking forward to this year. And I haven't made any resolutions. I haven't made any resolutions with CSG. I haven't made any resolutions at the gym. So
I go with a word. I choose a word instead of
hey.
a resolution. And
that's what I said last week, and you stole it from me.
No, I had a word. I think it was just more of a matter of eloquently stating it from that perspective. Is for me, it's the word intentional. It's being intentional about a lot more things. It's looking at how we schedule things, looking at how we plan and allow things to consume our schedule. And I think some of that came from, I read a plaque that was really about not waiting to get over the latest crises or chaos or whatever's going on, but or the storm, I think it said, and instead learning to dance in the rain. And so the idea is it's a mindset difference. It's embracing things from an optimistic perspective, but it's being intentional about those things. If you're not going to be intentional, you're just kind of floating through. And yes, you may have some good things, but you may have some low points. If you're more intentional about everything, you can manage it more effectively across the board. If you do that with a positive attitude, you're going to get a better result.
I think my word for this year is grace. And I say that because, I think I mentioned last week when Mike and I were talking about it, every year I try and pick a word, and what I'm learning and what I'm understanding is that, communication is a big part of that. Like when we communicate with our church, with the folks that are around us and that sort of thing. And sometimes, as frustrating as a conversation can be, sometimes you just have to take a breath and back up, and and I've had to do that probably far too many times. It's almost like I prayed for patience, and I didn't pray for patience. I don't do that anymore. But yeah, no, I like the intentional. Because you need to stop and think about what you're doing. And I think a lot of times, even, applicable to church safety, even pushing forward, a lot of times we get into this place where we're constantly doing the same thing over and over again and not thinking about why we do it or how we do it, or is there a better way to do it, right? And so sometimes we need to be gracious when people come to us and say, you know what, we've been doing it this way. What about this way? Maybe we can change things up a little bit. And we all on a regular basis deal with, those type of growing pains where we're trying to be better, trying to better ourselves and kind of go from there. So
interestingly enough, the word intentional, it doesn't come up directly as part of another topic we've talked about in the past, but the OODA loop of where you're observing, you're orienting, then you're making a decision, then you're acting. That is being very intentional, because you're deliberately going through a process and you're seeking context and gaining before you make a decision, before you act. So that is a form of being very intentional.
For sure. So, okay. So let's jump into our first topic for this evening. We're going to jump into inventory, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. So when we look at starting your year well, and when we talk about what are some of the what are some of the things we can do to improve on next year or this year? Next year, as in, if I had said this 2 weeks ago, forward.
Now.
What are some of the things? What do you guys usually put under that category of inventory? Like what comes to your mind?
I'd look first at who's on my team. In other words, take an inventory of the members that are still with you. I know some of us have gone away, come back, had seasons of online only with everything going on in the world. And I think you got to take an inventory. Who's truly on the team? Not just they're on the roster. Who's truly on the team, been showing up, and who do you have to work with?
And I think that's important because I know we've had at our church, we've had a lot of folks out sick, and a lot of folks caught in the quarantine, non-quarantine. I'm not sick, but somebody in my house actually got COVID, so I need to quarantine until until everybody's better, extending out, and that sort of thing. So it can be, honestly, I've gotten to the point in some cases with my team where it's okay. Here's what we have today. It doesn't matter what the schedule says. What matters is the folks that actually show up. So I think you're right on with that. Checking and seeing the folks that are coming in, what their skill set is, being able to say, okay, we need to sit down and we need to plan out training for this next year. What are our almost doing like a SWOT analysis, but what are our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities? What do we need to train more in, and what do we need to train better in, and make a plan to do that.
Absolutely. I think also you want to look at equipment and move on to what do you have? What's at your disposal? And taking an inventory is also a good time to kind of understand and say, is that equipment functioning well? Am I going to need to replace a battery on this radio? Am I going to need to change out a camera that may be faulty? Am I going to need to upgrade a lock on a given door if we're giving running into changes? Are we growing? All of those things are taking an inventory on your physical stock of equipment that your team uses on a regular basis. And that's beyond just the consumables. You're going to have to change out batteries for flashlights all the time. It's the bigger stuff that's going to have to take some planning and some financial conversations before you can. Not all of us are blessed with like a PEX card where we can just go and spend the money
For sure.
relatively quickly. I think
that would be amazing.
It could be a process.
What it would be like.
I don't think I've ever had that in my life. Ever. Here's a card.
I know some. I don't have one now.
The name is Bond. James Bond.
I don't know. I want to jump back to people real quick because I know Paul wanted to say something, and then we had somebody comment, and I apologize. I can't see from Facebook who it was, but someone commented, we lost a handful of people from the security team from participating on a regular basis. They only appear during high profile, large events. Appreciated, but missed during the other normal, boring, busy times. And I think we all get that. Like, it's one thing. I think we all have folks that occasionally will, only show up for larger events. And I think that's kind of normal. Just remember that for every individual that you have that only does that, every team always has one individual that will go above and beyond and show up whenever. And I'll tell you, I was blessed by that today. I had a husband and wife team come in. They weren't on the schedule. They didn't need to be there, but we had some folks get sick. And so yesterday I messaged them and I said, hey, could you guys, come in? And they were like, absolutely. And they're on the schedule next week. And I said, let me switch you out so you don't have to serve 2 weeks in a row. And the husband came up to me and he's like, nope, James, just leave us on there. That's fine. We'll do it. We know you're in a bad place. We just love serving. And that was a blessing. Like you walk in and you're just like, you're ready to rip somebody apart. And then somebody comes up to you and does that or says that, that takes the edge off. Like, that's a blessing.
I think before I'll throw it to you, Paul, in a second, on that specific comment that the person made, I think you got two schools of thought there. You got some that maybe you want to think that maybe some are doing that as an auxiliary team member, and
Sure.
maybe you have that outer layer or that outer ring of a team that says, you know what, we're not going to put you on every single week, but we know that you're trained with the team. We know you come to our meetings. You're there as a valuable member of the team when necessary. They're not going to be that tight inner layer. You hope it's not the you know what, they're burned out and they're still willing to help, but they're not really willing to help that much. And I'd say even more is, if it's only high profile, are they in the ministry for the right reason? In other words, I'd rather go into even a tighter high profile event with fewer members if they're there for the right reason than more if they're distracted.
For sure. Paul, what were you were gonna jump in?
Well, and you both have touched on it to a degree. So people feeling appreciated. I've got a gentleman on my team. I'm kind of a lieutenant within my new church's structure, and this guy is like solid as a rock. He gets there early. He does a security sweep. He's handing the radio to the deputy. He's taking radios down to our kids area, and he's just solid. Like, he is on point. And I always try to stop and thank him, because he's such a bedrock pillar part of the team that it's easy to miss. It's easy to just take that for granted. And so I always try to pause and say, hey, thank you for doing what you're doing. And recently he and his wife were gone, and I made sure to text him that day and say, hey, you were missed. And I was busy. I almost didn't do the security sweep. And there were 2 doors to critical areas that were unlocked to the outside world. It was scary. And it was just one of those things that was like, well, there's a reason we do these security sweeps. So if a person feels appreciated, they're much more likely to respond to things. And you guys might have written a book about retaining people and keeping people on a team. And
it's possible.
Shameless plug for the book, but when people feel appreciated, it really is true. I had a guy today. He is a retired police officer who does grant work for police departments. He's trying to get one of my departments a bunch of medical training. He messaged me and said, we missed this grant. I'm applying for the next one in February. And I messaged him back and said, hey, what you do goes unsung, but it doesn't go unnoticed. And it's absolutely needed. Did I mean that? Absolutely. Would have been easy to skip over that and go, oh, thanks, man. When people feel appreciated, we're much more likely to retain them. And that goes back to that. The second part of that is reaching out to people, because we've got people that for whatever reason, COVID pushed them away, things with family, health concerns, whatever happened, they started doing online church. It's easier to do, but we are commanded scripturally to gather. And if we can reach out to those folks that maybe they just need that reminder of, hey, Mike, I haven't seen you in a couple Sundays. Not that Mike would be skipping, but hey, Mike, I haven't seen you in a couple Sundays, brother. Love you. Everything okay? And by the way, we're going to be doing a training coming up. We're going to throw some barbecue together, and we're doing it Saturday about 10. I literally had a guy over the weekend turn to me. So, and this is second anecdote and I'm done. And he just moved from one place to another, and he lost his entire friend group. Well, that can be us if we get out of our church group and we're over here. And he's got a plugged in church group, but he doesn't have a group of guys. And so we're shooting and we're throwing axes and doing some stuff on Saturday. And as we're having this conversation, and by the way, he and I were both terrible at throwing axes, but we had this amazing conversation about God and life and marriage and all these things. And it was legitimately an iron sharpens iron conversation. I think it's way too easy for us, when we get really involved in what we're doing in church safety, to remember that we're building relationships here, to forget that we're building relationships here. And people are way more likely to respond and serve and feel needed and blessed if they know they're loved.
Absolutely. One of the things I was going to say real quick on that, and then we can go to our sponsor break. But we used to have at our church, we used to have a oversight pastor over the safety team that was a former police officer, and he was over safety in a few other places, and then a few other ministries. And then he moved to Florida to be the senior pastor of his own church. And he came up a couple weeks ago and preached, and as a guest preacher, and it was great. It was great to see his family. Love him, love his family very much. And today, I was sitting and I was listening to part of the service, and they touched on that. What you said, Paul, like touched on, don't overestimate or underestimate just saying thank you, like just making that acknowledgement. And
Amen.
so I messaged him and I said, hey man, I said, I don't know. I don't know if I'm sure you're busy today. It's Sunday morning, but this, God just put this on my heart to just say thank you, because you have no idea how much positive,
Hoorah. Amen.
positive, what a positive influence you've had in my life. And I said, even though you guys were only here a year, I said, one of the things I will never forget as long as I live is your leadership style. And your leadership style is to walk up to people and say, thank you. And it's not like a generic, hey, thanks. It's heartfelt. Like, I understand what you're dealing with. Thank you so much. Like, you can tell
Amen.
when it's right, when it's fake and when it's not fake.
Yes.
And so I said to him, and I messaged him and I said, I pray for you. I pray for your family all the time, because I know God's going to use you in crazy big ways in Florida with your church. We've already seen it. But I said, I just wanted to take a second and say thank you. And he messaged me back later and he's like, wow. He's like, thank you so much. He's like, I have been so discouraged, and you sending that 30-second message, he's like, that just completely made my day.
Touchdown.
And I'm like, wow. I'm like, I was a blessing, but I'm like, thanking you for being a blessing. So, Mike, you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, I think it ties right into here. I think recognition and going back to the comment as well. One other thought is, take an opportunity that, let's say it's that higher profile service or whatever it might be, where you have both your core team that is always there, your reliable folks, plus those folks that seem to only show up occasionally. Take that opportunity to recognize those core folks in front of the broad team. You're effectively calling out the ones that don't show up frequently by recognizing only the ones that do. So You're getting two birds with one stone there. Is you're propping up the folks that are truly dedicated and putting in that time, and you're basically serving that up against, in contrast to the ones that just showed up almost as Easter and Christmas Catholics, I guess, at times.
One of the things to think about with that too is just understanding and realizing that we're not talking about the every Sunday situations here, right? We're not talking about, right, hey, you know what? My car broke down on the way to church, so I'm going to be 10 minutes late. Right. Because that happens to all of us. And trust me, I mean, we all understand how fun it is sometimes getting your family in the vehicle to get out the door at a certain time to get to probably Mike more than anyone.
Sometimes you really need Jesus by the time you get to church.
For sure.
With three kids trying to make a morning service and be there early, not just on time. Yes.
For sure. Well, we're going to go ahead and take a quick break, and then we'll be right back with you guys. Don't go anywhere.
With over 50 years of experience with religious and nonprofit organizations, Thomas Alexander Insurance & Associates understands that your congregation is different from a traditional business. We're here to fulfill your needs, coming to you while creating a personal plan for your budget and size. From your local community to around the globe, we are advocates for you. Thomas Alexander Insurance & Associates, your partner in service.
What if there was a program so uniquely structured that it would help you protect your congregation and, at the same time, help you develop best practices to grow your ministry and to be impactful in your community? What if there was a biblical resource that would offer thousands of hours of training and experience to guide you in keeping your ministry safe and secure and being prepared for the unexpected? What if you could have the collective instruction from public safety and security experts from all over the world at your disposal to help you with a biblical view of safety and security? Impossible, you say? unlikely? It would be unheard of for someone to create something like that. We just did. Introducing the new biblically based 1-year certificate and associate's degree program in church safety and security. Developed by the Church Safety Guys and Centurion Bible College, this program is designed to give you the best of everything possible. Learn on your schedule, at your convenience, with experienced industry leaders, and receive college credit for it. Enhance your learning on protecting your ministry and community today. For more information, visit centurionbc.org or churchsafetyguys.com. Enroll to begin your path of biblical education and learning today.
Welcome to the Church Safety Guys broadcast. The Church Safety Guys help church and place of worship safety and security teams all over North America through our broadcasts, online communities, conferences, trainings, resources, and the all-new Church Security app. Download it today. Help us continue to reach churches by supporting our sponsors, purchasing our resources, and consider becoming a ministry partner by making a monthly or one-time donation. Remember to like, subscribe, and share this broadcast with your team. And now, back to the broadcast.
All right, welcome back to the Church Safety and Security broadcast with the Church Safety Guys. And tonight we're talking about starting your year well, and we're all here, which is great.
At the same time.
At the same time, and we're not having any technical difficulties at the
Joe,
moment. Which
what did you
is
do?
even
Why
better.
did you say that?
Well, between travel, I had a big road trip and towards, let's see, it was Q4 last year. And then we had the holidays. It feels like that hasn't happened as often towards this back half of the year, but or at least the last month or two. But it's good to have all of us here.
For sure. So if we can be of any assistance or help, you can reach out to us at any time on churchsafetyguys.com, our website. And we have a lot of great resources on there. And then also the Church Security app is free to download, free to register. And there's a whole bunch of great content on there for your team. And we will jump back into the topic. So we're talking tonight, as I mentioned, about starting your year well, and just some simple things that you can do to strengthen your team and encourage them. And we all put in quite a few hours, and it's just kind of a challenge sometimes with navigating coming out of the holidays as well, with remembering, okay, how are we doing things this year? Are we doing things, getting into a groove, and not being able to focus on making improvements, adjustments accordingly, etc. So I'll throw it over to Mike real quick. I think, yeah. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes. We're going to talk about vision. I'll let you tee that off.
Sure. Well, I mean, after you've kind of taken that inventory, which we covered before the break, and you really have a good handle on what do you have to work with for the year, you really want to and cast a vision for the year. And so you want to make sure that even with that inventory, it should be alignment back to what is the vision and mission of your church. Has there been anything new that changed? Have you gained any new elders? Is there new guidance that has come down from leadership? Now that is then used to then cast that vision for your team. Okay, that inventory, that assessment we talked about last week, about looking at how you closed out your year, what was that looking like? That SWOT analysis that James mentioned, all those things go into kind of helping you craft a vision and looking and casting that for your year.
For sure. So go ahead, Paul.
I was going to say, I've got a quick anecdote for that, because this is a real world where the rubber meets the road, because Mike's exactly right. New leadership is going to have a different style. They're going to embrace things differently. They might come from a different background. Maybe the church that they came from already had a security team that did things differently, or maybe this is the first time they've interacted with a security team. So for a lot of churches, it's not just that it's our first time running through this as a security team. A lot of times for leadership, it's their first time as well. But the anecdote is, we've had a conversation offline with a church where a real world, really dangerous situation happened. And when somebody moved to intercept and protect a member of their ministerial team, the ministerial team member was not on the same page. And in that moment, there was potential danger created. So without going into detail, there might be some stuff coming down the road with that. We never want to find ourselves in a situation where James the pastor is being protected by Paul the church security guy, and we're not on the same page, where James is like, no, what are you doing? I'm not okay with that. And that's an incredible, it can be anything from a minor embarrassment and having a meeting later in the week, all the way to this person could put themselves in danger unnecessarily. So that is absolutely huge. And I think we can take it for granted. We have to remember, and I remind myself of this frequently, we as church safety people do not think like everyone else. That's why we're called to what we're called to. And so we can't just assume, Mike, to your point, that pastor, that elder, that person that is our oversight, that they're on the same page. Because
Right.
heck, all of us that are married realize that English between a husband and a wife can be two completely different languages. It's just how that works.
Yep. And that's definitely true within the church. I mean, even our own language that we did start to use and as a team, it may not be the language that other ministries are active or privy to. When we start spouting acronyms, or we start saying like DLR and other sorts of things,
Right.
I mean, I catch myself doing that all the time. I'm always talking to another ministry lead, and I'll say, well, our standard's DLR, blah, blah, blah. And I always got to make sure I'm explaining what that means, and that's good for them when you kind of let them know that, say, hey, don't feel like it's a judgment. Don't feel like it's don't hold back. Don't second guess, and don't have a confirmation bias situation where, oh, you kind of just write it off. If something doesn't look right, bring it forward. Let us know.
Amen.
And we talk about it. It's interesting because I say that all the time, mission and vision. It's, if someone doesn't understand, and we may have a book or two out on this, out on this topic, but what always it kind of gets my attention and presses on me is a lot of times churches will reach out to us, or a church will reach out to us, and they'll say, we don't understand why this is happening, or why this is, yeah. That's a shameless plug. Mike's holding up the vision book. But what always strikes my attention with that is just the fact that if you don't know why you're doing what you're doing, right? And it seems so simple, right? But we get into that, and this goes back to what we said earlier. We get into those habits of doing the same thing over and over again without really thinking. And I think to an extent, if anything, I think COVID has been a blessing in that regard, because it's really snapped us out of the, and I hate the phrase the norm versus the new norm, but at the same time, it's snapped us in the church area. It snapped us out of just continuing to do the same thing over and over again. And it's made us stop and look and evaluate and say, okay, how are we doing church? How should we be doing church? How can we be doing church? And I think, honestly, I think the beginning of the year is as good a time as any to talk about the vision of the safety team and the mission, and that is to support the other ministries and the mission and vision of the church. And so if your team isn't, if your team isn't regularly mentioning that and regularly bringing it up and saying, what are we here for? Like, we're not here just to stand here. We're here to input, and we're here to serve, and we're here to contribute, right, to the success of this church mission and vision. And I think it builds engagement. I think it builds interest, and it gets people's attention, and it motivates them, right? If you know why you're doing what you're doing and you can buy into and support the mission or vision of the church, then it'll be a lot easier for you to be motivated to do that. So, Paul, you wanted to jump in?
Well, there's two things you hit on that immediately made me think. One is our job as church safety, as church security, is not to get in the way of ministry. We're not getting in the way of people coming to Christ. Our job is to facilitate it in a way that is safe. So yes, absolutely. The second thing is we've experienced this at our church. And you guys were both just talking about this. Online church has become an incredibly normal thing. We've literally had people walk in the door, oh, hi, and literally start talking to one of our pastors like they know them. Oh, how's your son, Tim? Is he okay? Does he still have a cold? By the way, I'm here to get baptized. I've been a member of your online congregation for the last 6 months, and they've literally come to know Christ sitting at home in their living room. So normally if somebody walked up to us that knew all these intimate details about our lives, we'd be like, okay, that's a firm deal. Our panic button. But one of the things that's changing with online church is people are going to walk in the door and they're going to know the names of people, and they're going to be nominally familiar with different things. And they're going to walk in the door. Oh, wow, I've never actually been inside the sanctuary. This is really neat. The stage is bigger than it looks from my house. And they're going to be asking questions, and they're going to be overly familiar. Now, normally we'd be like, stalker, and we'd be a little bit concerned. And I'm being funny, but I'm not. So the face of how people interact with church is changing slightly. What I love is when those churches that are doing the online service are reaching out and saying, hey, we want you physically, if you're able, if you're not stationed in Germany in the military, if you're not confined to a wheelchair at home, and there's no way for you to get here, we want you to come join the body locally. But how we interact with people due to COVID, due to these online services, is changing.
And what you said, it's funny because we had a family that just joined our church, just moved to Ohio, and they joined our church from California. They used to live in Southern California and decided to leave the state and move. And can't imagine why. No, I'm joking. But you can send all hate mail to the Texan of us.
Please address all hate mail to James McGarvey.
Let's see. Massachusetts, where I left, and California both had, I think, the highest depopulation events that they've had in years.
I don't know, but anyhow, it was really cool though, because what they said was when they moved out, they're like, we were able to move here. We moved to Ohio. We checked out this area because we knew this church, and they started watching over because a friend had said, hey, this church has got a great online service. They started watching it. They watched the online service for over a year.
Hallelujah.
And then when their family decided to move, they moved to Ohio to resettle, get reestablished, and they moved intentionally close to where the church was to be part of it.
That's how we ended up in Texas.
And then came in and they're like, hey, we're here. And everybody's like, who are you? Well, it turns out that they're a great family. They're not serial killers or anything like that. In fact, their older kids go to a church that's very near where my relatives live out in San Bernardino in Southern California. So, but it was just interesting to me because for us, we were all standing around scratching our heads like, this never happens. Like, should we be concerned that this person did exactly what you said, walked up and they're like, hey, pastor, I've been listening to you for the last year. It's so nice to get to meet you. And we're like, what? But what you wanted to, we're actually wrapping up. We have a few more minutes. You wanted to jump into OGSM, Mike, and talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think after you've cast your vision, that really kind of goes into when you know where you want to go, you can now kind of draft those into more of an objective format. So OGSM stands for objectives, goals, strategies, and measures. So I'll unpack each of those really quickly here. The shameless plug earlier, the book Vision certainly goes deeper into this and talks about vision as a whole and OGSM and so forth. But really starting by drafting those objectives that you have for your team. What do you want to achieve? Where do you want to be in a year? Okay, when you're conducting this inventory, what does that look like? What are those high level full year objectives that you want to set? You then take each objective one by one and break it down by writing as many goals as necessary to help kind of look at what you want to do. Now, simple, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. That's how you want to write your goals. Now, you're going to help identify how you're going to complete the objective. That's what the goal is for. So you tie that back to the objective. Then you have strategies for each goal. So it's kind of a waterfall approach. So again, you start with one objective. You may have one or more goals for that objective. You then may have multiple strategies for achieving that goal. So now you'll draft those strategies and kind of plan out your approach to how are you going to achieve the goal you set that'll help you achieve the objective that was part of your vision.
Right.
Finally, measure. What is the measurement that you're going to actually collect and identify that says the strategy is working, the goal is being attained, and you're reaching towards that objective. So it's really simple when you break it down that quickly, but the idea is that you want to really identify where are you trying to go, how are you going to get there, are you actually making progress, and then what operational gaps might you have throughout the year. You may need to refine your strategies. You likely don't change your objectives or your goals unless something big changes with the church, unless leadership or other things we talked about earlier. But you may change your measurement because you find you can't get that measurement, or you may change your strategy because you find it's not working, and that's fine. You still have the same objective, you still have the same goal, but you're finding different ways to get there.
Amen.
And real quick, I'm going to throw it over to Paul, but just because you have a shortcoming in one of those, like, don't expect that, the first time that you do that, if you go down the road and you're like, I'm going to map this out and I'm going to do the OGSM, don't feel like you're a failure if the first time it doesn't work the way you think it works. Because it doesn't have to be complicated. It can be simple. You can take it one step at a time to go through and say, okay, let's keep it simple. Actually several of our listeners have already commented, keeping it simple and not trying to overthink it. But you want to be able to have some way of measuring what you're doing, measuring the ministry, measuring the success. That's one of the reasons why when I talk to a church, usually I encourage them to do incident reports. And it seems like a pain. It doesn't seem like a big deal, but at the end of the day, an incident report can not only protect your leadership so they know what's going on and what happened, but it can protect you because it gives an object that can be measured, and it tells us what exactly is going on and how those resources are being used. So, Paul, you wanted to jump in?
Well, I can, or Mike, do you want to make your comment and then I can make my comment and pray us out? What do you want to do?
Sure. I could throw out one last quick thought there is after you kind of have those objectives, that's what you're mapping and managing throughout the year. But one of those things you want to potentially have as an objective is perhaps better alignment with the staff and other ministry leads. So that could be a core objective. Maybe you're already a rock star at that and you're doing really well. But honestly, I think each of us have an opportunity to do more, reach more, connect more with those other ministry leads. And so if you don't already have those sessions on the calendar, reach out, schedule time with each ministry lead and other ministries of the church. And even if all you do is listen to find out about what they have seen, what they've heard, what they think of safety and security, and get their perspective, it will give you insight by which you can then perhaps inform the team, make adjustments, come back, maybe even helps you with your strategies to your achieving your goals, because you're hearing from input outside your own echo chamber.
For sure. Very
Copy
good.
that.
Very good point.
So I wanted to make a really quick comment about going through your equipment. One of the police department's side chaplain, new chief takes over. We've talked about it before, ends up with a boo-boo. It's bleeding pretty profusely, finds out that all of his medical has literally petrified. It's just a petrified forest of dried up stuff. Liquids have evaporated. Stuff is completely useless. I had to, as the civilian, go to my vehicle and grab a coagulant to stem the blood flow of his boo-boo. That would be very embarrassing and potentially life-threatening in our churches. And maybe you are new to the lead position in your church and you're looking around going, hey, what are some things I need to be looking at? Maybe your medical needs a really good visit. Mike, you were just talking about making sure that your equipment's, are the batteries working? I just had an aha moment a couple of days ago. I was going through one of my bags. I found out that times two sets of batteries were dead that shouldn't have been dead. And I was like, man, I'm really glad that I'm looking at this equipment today and not when my life depended on it. And so imagine being in a life or death situation in the dark and your weapon mounted light for this piece of equipment is non-functional. So those are a little bit funny, but not when they matter. AED batteries. Have you checked those? What's the status of your fire extinguishers? Even if the fire extinguisher was inspected, that doesn't mean that when you walk up to it and that needle is in the red that you shouldn't. So these little things are desperately important, because that fire extinguisher, you absolutely do not need that fire extinguisher until you do. And when you do need it bad. And so it's so easy to overlook those little things like that. So anyway, that was just my comment on that. Gents, anything else before I pray us out?
No, I say go for it.
All right. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord God, we've talked about for a long time as iron sharpens iron. I thank you for moments like these, Lord God. We've had an opportunity to interview amazing people, to have people on the show with backgrounds in law, with insurance, Lord God, with all these different things that you brought to the table. I thank you for that. And Lord God, I thank you for tonight. It's fun to just have kind of the home group and get to visit and kind of talk and catch up, Lord God, but to remind folks of oftentimes how it's just those little simple things that make all the difference in the end, Lord God. I thank you for tonight. I ask that you should help this broadcast to reach the right ears. We lift it up to you in your son, Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. So thanks for hanging out with us tonight. And again, you can always reach out to us at churchsafetyguys.com or through the Church Security app. And next week, we will actually be talking about the Inspire, Influence, and Impact book Mike and I put together, and we're going to spend some time just kind of going through. And if you haven't had a chance to take a look at that, and moving forward with the broadcast, we want to highlight resources and different things like that would be beneficial to you guys. So join us next week, same time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sunday evening, and have a great week. We will talk to you next time. Take care, guys. God bless.
Bye.
Thank you for joining the Church Safety and Security broadcast with the Church Safety Guys, sponsored by Checker. We hope that you found it informative, and we appreciate your feedback. Be sure to share our broadcast with your teams. Join the discussion online, and for other great resources, download the Church Security app or visit our website at churchsafetyguys.com. Remember, keep a servant's heart, a mindset of ministry, and Semper Disciplina. Always be training. Have a blessed week.